Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the React.js training. So the first thing that we have to do, actually I have already done that, is to fix up our background image, and there's nothing much to be worried about. It's basically a CSS being broken, and if you're coming up from the web dev, you might have already been into the situation quite a lot. What we have done, you need to search for this header guy because inside this header guy there was an inline style which actually broke our app. We deleted that and it made our app really nice, but the image was gone. So I have added and injected a TTT. I know that's a bad name for the class, but right now I'm just gonna work with it. So TTT, you can choose a pretty good name. Now the next thing that you need to do is go into the index.html, and basically it's the index.html inside the public folder. Notice we are not touching the start bootstrap index now. We don't want it actually. I would just close it down because it's completely irrelevant. We have copied up everything. Now the next thing that you have to do is, since we want to write some CSS rules more, and this one was linked as min.css, and we don't want to work with the min.css. We want to work with the cleanblog.css. Okay, that's the step number 2. Now open this inside the CSS, cleanblog.css. There we go. I went into the full bottom of this CSS file and written as some code, that is .ttt, which is just defining the class. I hope many of you would be already aware this is just the basics of HTML. And in case you are still struggling with that, I would highly recommend you to go and check out the complete front-end developer in our library there. That's a super killer awesome course that will just give you everything about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, and tons of other things. Back onto, I know that was kind of a promotion, but just back in here. All you have to do is write background colon and then URL. In the pair of parentheses, you have to simply write /images. That means we are going one directory back, and then we are looking up for the image, and inside the image we are looking for the background, simply home-bg.jpg. okay, so that's it. That will just fix up your app, and now basically it would look just exactly the same, but now the interesting part is we are rendering everything from app.js, which is in itself a huge achievement that you have achieved so far. Now in case you're still giving you some errors, that's completely okay. Just look out for the self-closing HR tags. You might have missed some of them. Okay, now what we'll be doing, we'll be breaking this further into some of the components so that we can be quite free with the component creation process. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll just close the CSS and I'll close a couple of files because they are distracting. And we don't need index.js as well, and index.html, we don't need you. And we don't need untitled as well. So we'll be opening just the app.js, excuse me for that. And what we'll be doing is just right click on this source and create a new folder. And what we want to do is move this navigation into its own separate component, and we'll be calling that component. Okay, so right click on that, and I'll create a new file, and that file will be inside the source, and I'll be calling it as navbar.js. okay, that sounds good so far, and make sure N is capital in that. Okay, and the first thing that you have to write is import react comma component. And notice, if you have followed the exercise that I've given you, it's so much breeze for you now. And this will come up from React. We don't need DOM in here because DOM is already there in our main file where we need it. And then I'll use rcom to component, and I'll call this as navbar. Okay, and that's good. We need to export that as well, so we'll be exporting that as well. So we'll be calling it as export default, and we'll be exporting simply the navbar there. Looks good. And now we'll be just copying and pasting some codes from app.js. So from this guy in here, press just click on there at the top and just press down your shift key and click in here, and we'll be pressing command X to cut that, and we'll be moving everything inside this div. And in fact, we don't need div, we can just return one element, which would be nav. It can be any element, it can be nav, div, anything. That is good. And as soon as I save this and save our app.js, this should be complaining that yes, your navbar is gone. Now we need to call this navbar component in here, which is pretty easy. And we can simply say that, hey, it's a navbar and self-closing tag. Save that and complain because we haven't called that, hey, navbar is not defined. So all we need to do is import that as well. So we can do so quickly. And we'll say import navbar from, and notice you have to call this as /navbar. Now you don't need to write navbar.js, that is already being handled. Save that. And notice everything is back, but what we are doing now is we are actually calling this navbar from a component itself, which is a big deal because now this is a dumb guy and you can pass on some properties from this parent and that will be accessible in here and you can do a lot of things, but we are not gonna do. We just want to clear up our things on the components here. And notice obviously the next step would be to just go ahead and move this header part into its component. And again, I'll be doing this exactly with you and I'll leave rest of the simple app to just do on your own. So like for example, footer, and this guy should be a component container, and in the container you can actually make more components to be called. So it would be a chain of component, no big deal. You can do so, I believe in you. Header, so right click on the source, create new file, and we'll be calling it as simply header.js. And again, it would be simple import react comma component, and that will be coming up from React. So easy. And rcom for component, and notice how the snippets is saving you a lot of time. Otherwise you would be all the time would be just typing the code. And I want it to be a capital H. What are you doing? Okay, and in here we need to export. And by the way, just to tell you quick syntax, you can do export default there as well, but I like the bottom default, but I'll leave this exactly the same to show you just the syntax in here. And I'll go into the app.js, we'll cut that out, Command X by the way for the cutting, and I'll be just throwing it back using the header. Save that. And obviously I can press in here and press Command Shift D to duplicate that. And in fact, I can just click in here, hold down your command key and click in here. Now we have two cursor and we can write header in here. That was quick. And just in here, and I can simply call in header, self-closing tag, of course, don't forget that. And now the things are actually quite good. And notice our app.js is now getting cleaner and cleaner. And since we have time, I'll do one more for you, and that will be footer. And that would be again super easy. And in fact, what we can do is, in fact, we could have actually created one more folder and we could have stored these components inside that, but no worries at all. We can just do it in here as well. And let's just quickly do the footer as well, new file. And that would be footer.js. Again, that would be import, and I can actually copy paste. I can be a little bit lazy in here, copy, and we can go into the footer and paste that in here. That is good. rcom to React component, and we'll call that as footer. And again, I'll be using a short syntax in here. So I'll be simply saying export default there, and just go into app.js, look for the footer, click on in here, don't select. Just click on there, hold down shift key and click there, Command X. I know some of you might be lost there because I'm moving a little bit fast, but again, you have an option to slow me down. There we go, we have got footer. Go into app.js. As soon as I save this, notice our footer is gone. And I have to actually make sure that the order is good. I have to call in footer in here. And that would be footer. Obviously it's going to complain as soon as I save because we have not imported the footer. And we can do it quickly. Command Shift D to duplicate, and I'll replicate my cursor and I'll call the footer. Save that, and we're expecting to get a footer back. Notice our footer is back in here, back in action. And the only thing that's remaining now is actually the container, which I believe you can easily just shrink it down. And now notice this is how almost our app.js is going to look like. So everything is modular now. If you need this footer, almost exactly the same footer, you can just copy this file, or maybe you can just call it anywhere. And for 100 page, you just have to call this footer. If you want 2 footers, just for the demo purposes, you have to just call footer, and there you go. Now your component is fully modular there. And notice now we have 2 footers there. You need 2 many bars, or maybe a header area at any page. Notice it's just a matter of calling this component. So far, now you might be understanding that how we are saving time with that. Now I'll give you a quick assignment to you as well. Now move this container into its separate component. That's good. Now I also want you to move this division in here, which is post preview, into its separate component. Now I want you to do one thing is when you create a new container, in that container component, inject this guy, this post preview. So basically what we'll be doing, in the app.js, we'll be calling container component. In the container.js, we'll be calling post preview.js. So this is kind of a linking of components. So we are injecting into the injection. So that's kind of a nice. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed this so far. We'll be leaving this project in here because we just wanted to clear up every basic on the component. And by the far, if you have been doing this along with me, or you have done this somehow, then I'm pretty sure you might be facing tremendous amount of confidence in the component. So that's it for this video, and this is our very first component success that we have got, and I'll catch you up in the next video.